Hello, everybody, and welcome to the May 6th Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, joined by Eric Donovan.
And we have one episode to bring you this week, 3 races, and only 3 days of racing the first week at beautiful Belmont Park. Great to be over here, but you know what? Sometimes the dirt racing here, there's not a lot of stuff to find because the races are run and the wide sweeping turns doesn't make that much difference to save ground or not. So you really depend on a lot of turf races, and we didn't see a whole bunch going on in the turf races.
Right, we actually have 3 dirt races, which is surprising, but it just there wasn't that much we could find. We'll find more for next week. I think I already have some ideas from Wednesday's card, being this Thursday today. But we'll get to work. We'll actually go to opening day. And the third race, it was a pretty interesting maiden race. And obviously, the winner of this maiden race, a Todd Pledger horse named Christopher Liam, very good. I don't think this horse that we're going to show, the 5-month senior, had per se a difficult trip of any kind, though he obviously had a trip that you couldn't possibly win with. And he doesn't have trouble in the race, but he feels like a horse that might have just been sort of prepped off a layoff. I
agree 100%. Monsignor's first race back on November 21st at Aqueduct last year was nowhere to be found on the front end. Made a good late run to finish only 4.5 lengths back, but did finish 7th there, but had no speed. And here's Monsignor going up to join what's a pretty competitive pace here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, the 7 horses inside is a Rick Dutrow horse in there. That horse actually completely collapses. Now, Monsignor does fall apart at the end. This was a very fast pace. I guess he was kind of fresh off the layoff. It felt like there was that point earlier in the race where Fernando Jara maybe could have raided him a little bit. But, then he would have been strangling him back. And I just think this was a horse that needed this race fresh off the layoff. Getting involved between horses. Brother Bird on the outside, mind that Bird, he actually ran very well to finish second, involved in the pace, but he has the clean outside trip. The winner in here, Christopher Liam, he's sitting right behind the perfect trip, and he's a stakes horse for Todd Pletcher. But Monsignor could benefit from this race and run a lot better next time.
Yeah, I thought this was a salty field of maidens, and going a mile off the bench for Monsignor. He only had that one race, was only 5.5 furlongs, so a big difference for him coming off the pace, going 5.5, and being on the pace going a mile here in this race here, and you'll see he drops over to the rail, and he's soon going to tire pretty badly here, but you know what? First race back off the layoff, I think there's only room for improvement here.
I agree. He's going to be a little dirtied up from this race. Now, obviously, while Christopher Liam's running away from the field, and Devin Rock here, just a horse I wanted to mention as we lost him in the circle. Jimmy Jerkins' first turn. He made a little bit of a move on the turn. I thought he flattened out, though, precipitously and should have had more run considering the trip he got and maybe beaten Brother Bird, even though he was a first-time starter.
Yeah, he did get a pretty good trip considering the pace and where he was early on, so I don't know what to make of him. Second time out, but Monsignor second off the layoff. I think I'll move forward.
I agree he's going to, and he's not going to look that good off of this race. Obviously, could run some salty maiden races here. Monsignor is going to run better in his next start. He showed too much talent first time out, and he shows something in this race. Might be a good horse to bet and get a price on. We'll move on now to another race from opening day, and this is the 6th race, and we want to look at a horse, the 1, Mr. Unstoppable.
And Mr. Unstoppable ends up finishing 3rd here, but breaks from the rail and breaks from the inside post, and we'll highlight Mr. Unstoppable there just to identify him. And, we'll see where he is early on in the race, and, the way the pace develops in here, I think where he was early on was the right spot here. He's being ridden, in about the 7th or 8th position now down toward the inside, getting a pretty good spot here behind the pace, but we'll see as they move for the far turn, a little bit of a premature move here.
Yeah, Victor Santiago rode him, has ridden very well, and we talked about him as a rider, and he had a nice Aqueduct meeting. But this is a situation, and I think the eventual winner is sort of right ahead of him, and that's 49 George Street is on the outside. Would that be him somewhere in there?
Yep.
And Mr. Unstoppable's behind him, but even here, he's sort of starting to rally, not significantly. He's just picking up position a little bit. I don't think he's gained that much ground, really, from where he was versus the leader with that big gap between them. But it's in around here and starting to move up where he really starts to move up precipitously. I mean, you think of the gap between where he was back there, and already he's moved up about 2-3 lengths from the leader. And the winner, 49 George Street, has still let him go. And now, at this point, Mr. Unstoppable is moved up right in the lead. And this is just a classic premature move.
Yeah, they haven't even reached the 3 ace pole yet here. And I think, getting used to riding at Belmont, much different than riding at Aqueduct. I think on the turn you have a lot more, you just have a lot more racing on the turn being done, and you got to adjust yourself, and I think he moved a little bit too soon here. What I do like about Mr. Unstoppable is that he's going to beat out Untoppable, who's the horse just to his inside in here, who got the lead and did go quick, but still didn't really have to make that big move to get to the lead, and he's going to outgame Untoppable there, but we'll see the 2 other horses coming from off the pace, 49 George Street and Oedipus O'Neill, who comes off the rail to get second here. I thought a very good effort here for Mr. Unstoppable, who was stretching out to a mile, has good experience both at a mile and 6 furlongs, so anywhere between those those two distances, I think he'll be okay with the different ride next time.
I don't disagree. I don't like that Oedipus O'Neill beat him for second. Oedipus O'Neill obviously had a good ride and a good trip, and a much better trip. Oedipus O'Neill is Oedipus O'Neill.
Right.
I don't love that he beat him, but Oedipus O'Neill on his good races has run well before. Classic, the winner, 49 George Street, just got a great ride, a patient ride, did everything right. But you're right. I think it was the experience of Belmont, that middle move. He'll run better next time. He's off of two good races. We've got one more race to show, and it's a race, the second race from Sunday, the second. And there's a horse in here, Decola's Officer. We're not sure we really like him, but he was worth talking about simply because of all the money he took in here.
He went off at 5-1 for trainer Greg Garofalo. Low-profile connections. There he is highlighted, and we'll also talk a little bit about Sue's Purse, who's right outside the one horse right now. Gets in a little bit of trouble coming out of the gate. Decola's Officer does, but and we'll see him, and then we'll take a look at Sue's Purse right here again. There's Sue's Purse after the one kind of separates from Sue's Purse there, and we'll just take a look as they run down the backstretch here. The pace in this race, I thought would be a little bit more competitive. It ended up a long way around, going up on the front end, and the race really did kind of stick together pace-wise.
Yeah, that's one thing that's important about the race, is that the winner got away with murder on the front end, and a horse that it's hard to really like, sort of won because of saying the easy fraction the front end. The thing about Decola's Officer is he was bet heavily. These horses usually have some speed, and he just doesn't get him out well, and it's bumped around and sort of shuffled out of the race. He's way out here. Sue's Purse is behind him. It's not that we think Sue's Purse is a bet back and so good. Sue's Purse, you look at his PPs, you know what kind of horse you're dealing with. The fact that horse makes the wider move into the slow pace and easily ends up being Decola's Officer is a knock on Decola's Officer. Decola's Officer, still a horse that might be a little better than it looks off this race.
He may, and I think the race, as I said before, kind of the pace held together well in here. Looks like a little bit of an inside-y race to me, but the horses, on the outside might have been affected. But I don't like here Sue's Purse is blowing by this horse late, and Sue's Purse has had 7 chances going into this race, kind of a nondescript maiden claimer who's run from off the pace and finished fourth a couple of times here. But I don't know, for a horse like Decola's Officer who gets bet so strongly first time out, you'd expect a little bit more. I know he got in a little bit of trouble early on, made the move around the turn, but still, I would have liked to see him hold off Sue's Purse there.
I don't disagree. I still think he's kind of an interesting horse simply because the money was just so significant for those low-profile connections. Simon Husband's riding the horse who has the one win on opening day, but he has had not that many wins and not much success in New York, somewhat due to the horses he rides, but also he's had some trouble early in races similar to this. I'm interested where Decola's Officer shows up. I might give this horse one more chance, but I agree with you. He might be a bit of a trap because of the money he took. Maybe he showed something in the morning, and he's ultimately not going to be very good on the racetrack.
And he's probably going to get bet again next time out off the money he took first time out. We'll see if there's a rider change perhaps second time out, but and we'll see what kind of field she ends up in too.
Yeah, it's tough for the low-profile connections to get a top rider ride, but now this horse has run once and taken some money. An agent might have some more interest in getting a more high-profile rider on him, and we'll see what happens, and as always, see what price he is. Of course, that does it for this week's Trips and Traps. We do have that email address, and we hope we hear from you. That's tripsandtraps@NYRAinc.com.
Thanks for watching, and we look forward to those emails. Have a good week.